Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of my new podcast, Book and Story World, with author Priya Grewal. Big hello to everyone. Thank you for everyone who listened to my first episode. So, since last week, I have self-published my 17th book with Amazon KDP called Battle for the Universe by Priya Grewal. It's a fantasy horror genre and it is currently free to download on Kindle. So it's free from today until Sunday. So that's 24th of April until Sunday, 27th of April. So if you are listening out there, please do check it out and download it while it's free on Kindle. And it's also available in paperback on Amazon as well. So I thought for my second episode of Book and Story World with myself that I would read out the first couple of chapters of my new story, Battle of the Universe. So it is called it's called Battle for the Universe. So that's just been released yesterday. So I'll get started. So Battle for the Universe, Chapter 1. 1,000,000 years had passed in the magical empire of Mrazkian since their universe had split into two sides, good and evil. The empire of Mrazkian was made by the Feyaruta, the first beings in existence. The Feyaruta had made themselves a magical universe when they were born. They came up with the human form and lived in a wondrous magical land. There were millions and millions of them. They loved their universe of magic and lived in the palaces they had all made for themselves. They all became neighbours and good friends with those they lived near to. They had made their own villages and towns and many amazing inventions for themselves to enjoy. One day, billions of years later, one of the Feyaruta named Zarafak had the idea of all making an empire between themselves. He suggested that they all make beings and make a universe for the beings full of entertainment and amazing things to do. The Feyaruta loved the idea and honoured Zarafak for his idea by making him the High King. They honoured his wife Kalsha for helping him design the suggested universe by making her the High Queen. The rest of the Feyaruta would be the one universe government with the High King and the High Queen, looking after all the beings they had all made as individuals together. The Feyaruta were all divided into married couples as one of their members had invented marriage and sex. Each Feyaruta, male and female, had selected their perfect match to live with and marry using magic. Excitedly, the Feyaruta had made billions and billions of beings between themselves. They named the species they created Erastians, and they called the empire the Empire of Mrazkian. The Feyaruta made a wonderful, magical universe for the Erastians. It was beautiful and magical and breathtaking. The Erastians marvelled at the beauty of the universe made by the Feyaruta even billions of years later. The Feyaruta lived in their own universe called Kavesha. This meant that the Erastians had a wonderful time socializing with one another and eventually got married too, whilst the Feyaruta looked after them and carried on inventing many ways to entertain the population, from games to luxurious living and all kinds of inventions. From the view of the good Feyaruta, they had lived happily governing the empire of Mrazkian for hundreds of billions of years. Then, one day, all of a sudden, true horror and darkness had disrupted their universe, changing the landscape forever. Chapter 2. One of the greatest and most loved inventions of one of the Feyaruta for all in existence was the invention of babies. The Feyaruta and Erastians both delighted in having babies who grew into adults. It made marriage and living with a partner even more special. All had 9 sons and 9 daughters by the time the Night of Evil occurred. The sons and daughters of all ranged from 1,000,000 to 10,000 years old. It was a night like any other for the good of the universe when they were viciously attacked and killed. Some were attending balls and parties, others were bowling or at the cinema, and others were simply lounging at home with their families. The majority of Erastians had reported after that they were happy and smiling one moment, and the next moment they felt extreme pain and screamed out loud, and then nothing. They were gone. The good of the Feyaruta were also merely enjoying their evening regardless of their activity, doing one of the activities mentioned above. It was reported after that one moment they were all happy and relaxing and having fun. The next they felt themselves falling into a huge dark cave. When they landed on the hard ground, they could all see one another in the cave and then looked around and screamed in terror for the first time in their lives. They had never experienced the feeling of fear before. It was horrible. The scariest faces imaginable sneered and leered at the good Feyruta and many of their sons and daughters. The faces of the unknown species were terrifyingly maddening. Then the terrifying beings started chasing all the Feyruta, the great many of them, and started stabbing and torturing them all with their different weapons. The Feyruta felt a horrible feeling of what the beings told them was called pain when struck with the weapons. They saw a red substance leave them all as they were attacked, and the unknown species who introduced themselves as demonkind said it was called blood. The blood scattered everywhere. The fear and pain were unbearable. The Feyruta ran through the caves and tried to hide. The place was decrepit to look upon, and they all tried to hide when entering another part of what the demons called their prison. They called the prison Sacrilege and told all the Feyruta and their children that it was their new home. The Feyruta suffered horrific pain in the prison and extreme fear for 15 minutes. Then a miracle arrived and all were rescued. One of the Feyruta, called Carlin, had tricked one of the demons into giving him his magic back. The demons were also magical beings. Carlin had been alone in a torture room with a demon when he told the demon he could make him famous and popular beyond his wildest dreams. The demon named Jahiros had fallen for the trick and restored Carlin's powers. The Feyruta had been bound in the prison, all drained of their magic. Before rescuing all, Jahiros told Carlin that the culprit who had organized the mass killing of the Erastians as the evil deed had been branded was, in fact, the High King Zarafak. The demon told Carlin that they had organized it so hologram versions of themselves were in Sacrilege so that the good Feyruta would never work out. It was themselves running the prison really and torturing themselves along with demonkind made to scare all the good Feyruta forever in the prison. Jahiros named the 11 other leaders of what was called the Nightmare World. The other leaders were friends of Zarafak. Kalsha, his wife, was one of his accomplices. The others were Rakan, Selisa, Taskor, Hafilto, Morotil, Nazul, Festoon, Amalsho, Weslov, and Orison. Together the 12 made up what they called the Council of Darkness. All 12 invented death, pain, weapons, and torture together, and designed and made all of demonkind to be the scarers of the good Feyruta and any of their good sons and daughters for all of eternity. Jahiros told Carlin that Zarafak had found out that he was unpopular and unknown. He heard some of the Erastians while visiting an area he had made raving about some members of the Feyruta. Zarafak had not been noticed as he walked around one of the lands he had made hundreds of billions of years ago. Zarafak thought himself and his wife were forever famous and popular names known throughout every land, as it had been his idea to make the empire of Erastians, and his wife had helped him design the idea. He thought every citizen alive, along with every member of the government, knew the names of the High King and the High Queen. Upon returning to his palace, he investigated his fame and popularity statistic and saw he was on zero for both. No one knew who he was outside his circle of friends. He investigated the reason why and saw it was because he was so rude to everyone, as a result of being so in love with himself over his empire idea. His name had fallen to dust. He may as well not even have existed, he thought to himself. Instead of making amends to all the Erastians he had made and defended over the years, rendering him forgotten, he had decided to destroy them all instead. When it came to the Feyruta, he despaired and raged as he saw just over half of the Feyruta were wildly popular and even well known for inventions, and just under half were unpopular and unknown like himself. This was a result of being rude and insulting to others. So Zarafak called a meeting with his wife and friends, and they decided to destroy all the popular and good Feyruta. They raged when finding out the nice sons and daughters of the Feyruta were amazingly popular and even famous too throughout the lands. The odd son and daughter had even made popular inventions in the land. They discovered that nearly half of the Erastians made or born were jealous of the popular and famous members of the Feyruta. The 12 knew they could make a plan with the jealous Erastians. They also discovered that if they made all the non-popular and non-famous Feyruta, along with any non-popular or non-famous sons and daughters of the Feyruta, aware of the fact that they were on zero for both popularity and fame, that they would all join the 12 in their evil deeds. The Council of Darkness made up the prison Sacrilege for fear and painful torture, so that the masses would hail them all heroes for the evil invention of inflicting fear via demons and pain on the good and popular for all of eternity. The masses would delight in the existence of demon kind made to scare the good, and would love being in disguise as demons too and doing the torturing. This meant that the 12 were famous and popular with evil forever, as opposed to killing the Feyaruta too, and the popularity disappearing for the 12 eventually with evil. They recruited all, and the rest of the turned evil Feyaruta helped the 12 organize the end of the universes with the Erastians. It took nearly 500 years to organize due to how many citizens of the universe had been made. Non-popular and non-famous sons and daughters of the Feyaruta betrayed parents and siblings. Parents betrayed sons and daughters. Erastians betrayed family members or husbands and wives by agreeing to kill them all over their envy of the good and popular Feyaruta. It had all been planned with the good having no idea that a whole new evil world called the Nightmare World had been born without their knowledge, the members all intent on ending the lives of the good and destroying their existences forever. Finally, Jaheros finished filling in Karlin. Jaheros gave Karlin his magic back and Karlin fled straight away. He found out that Zarafak had invented an impenetrable realm in case anything went wrong in the plan for all of evil to flee to. Karlin quickly replicated the impenetrable sanctuary and rescued all the good out of the evil prison Sacrilez. The good Feyaruta together resurrected all the good Erastians. Karlin shared the knowledge of what had happened to all, many with traitors who had fled them in their own families and friends and as husbands and wives. As soon as the good Feyaruta and their good sons and daughters disappeared out of the prison, evil fled into their impenetrable sanctuary. Jaheros realized he had been tricked and ran into his own dimension, replicating the magic of the impenetrable sanctuary for himself. The evil Feyaruta fled their own evil sons and daughters and evil Erastians into their own hidden realm so they couldn't experience everyone turning on them due to failure. Zarafak also fled by himself for being the one who made his 11 friends aware of being unpopular and non-famous in the first place. Evil had scattered into many different sanctuaries, the magic protecting them impenetrable. Evil couldn't attack good again as they couldn't breach the replicated magical walls of the sanctuary, and good couldn't capture evil due to the impenetrable magical walls. 1,000,000 years passed, one side never reaching the other. Chapter 3. One day, 1,000,000 years after the night of universe-wide killing, abduction, scaring and torture, a member of the Feyaruta called Elazra organized a meeting for all government members in the government meeting hall of Kavacia and Meraskian. During the 1,000,000 years, the Feyaruta and Erastians and their good sons and daughters who had been betrayed by their spouses or partners had managed to find love again and remarried. It took a great deal of time for them all to stop fearing what was now called the Nightmare World in their impenetrable sanctuaries, along with their intentions towards every single good member of the universe. The Feyaruta had looked after their sons and daughters, and the Erastians helping all overcome the fear and trauma of the night of horror, along with healing themselves. Still, the threat of the Nightmare World coming up with an idea on how to kill and capture them all again for torture still plagued the whole universe. So far, their side had not come up with a way to capture their evil neighbors in their protected magical sanctuaries of evil. There were many sanctuaries as the members of the Nightmare World continued to argue with one another, and so many had fled into their own sanctuaries. Now, 1,000,000 years later, Elazra had called a mysterious government meeting. All members of the Feyaruta sat in the assembly hall. Their families, along with the Erastian families, had all been split and divided, with traitor family members killing all and torturing and fleeing into their sanctuaries. New families had merged through remarriages, and people managed to find some happiness with their new family members, despite the threat outside. Elazra called for everyone's attention when all members had arrived for the meeting. She stood at the center podium in the center of the assembly hall. "My friends, thank you for gathering here today at my request," Elazra greeted the assembly of Feyaruta. "I know it has been a long time since the dividing of our universes into good and evil, and themselves fleeing us, neither side managing to capture the other. But after this long while, I have come up with an idea, and looking magically, I have seen that my plan works in capturing and defeating all evil and draining them of their magic to pay in their own prison Sacrilez. And upon agreeing, we can keep them there for hundreds of billions of years before putting them all down for good and killing them all too," Elazra announced to the government of the universes. There were shocked gasps and hushed whispers from the Feyaruta in their seats. They waited intrigued and shocked, waiting for Lazra to continue. My plan is not an easy one. It involves putting one of our own children into a torment situation to lure all evil out of their sanctuaries into our pretend evil one to participate and spectate in the torture of one of our children. I know it sounds terrible, and I did not know if anyone would be able to endure my plan, but there is one. The individual has to be a new baby born for the plan to work, and one child to be born has the bravery to endure the plan and can be recovered from the torment situation, Lazra continued. And before I tell you more, the chosen child who can endure the plan is a baby girl. We have all had 18 children in total, even if our evil sons and daughters fled into the sanctuary of evil, and our good ones are still with us. The child who can endure the plan of torment for stadiums of evil to be tricked into leaving their sanctuaries to spectate and participate in her torture is the 30th child of 2 members of our government. She would have been their 30th child born. The chosen child is the future daughter of Leroux and Harum, Lazra called to all. Leroux, a female member of the Feyaruta, looked at her husband Harum in dismay. The whole assembly turned to look at the pair in shocked silence. Let me continue to explain to you all before talking to Leroux and Harum individually, Lazra announced to the assembly. Lazra looked around the assembly hall and continued. Okay, so thank you everyone for listening to the first 3 chapters of my new book, Battle for the Universe by Priya Grewal. So it is fantasy horror genre, and it is free to download on Kindle from today until Sunday 27th of April, so please do take advantage of that offer, and then it's available on Amazon in paperback or on Kindle. So that concludes the 2nd episode of my Book and Story World podcast with author Priya Grewal myself. Thank you to everyone for listening, and see you all soon with my 3rd episode next week. Take care, everyone. Bye.